So we have just a few domestics before we get started. The event is a webinar, which means that everybody's videos and audios are muted. Sorry, just turning over the page. The chat function has also been switched off because a lot of disabled people is not accessible to a lot of disabled people. In the email that we sent you to invite you to this event, though, there was a link. There was an email address you can use to send any questions to this email address or comments as well. These will be circulated to everyone who attended after the meeting. If you do send any emails, please, if you could keep them polite and not attack anyone personally. We do reserve the right not to circulate anything that is offensive or discriminatory. We have BSL interpreters and captioners present. So hopefully that's all working well for those who require those services. You should also have received an agenda in the email that gave you the link. You will see we will be having 2 breaks, one at 7:45 after all the candidates have spoken, and one at 8:20, which is when I will leave and this will take over. Okay. Just so all the candidates are aware, you'll have 5 minutes each to speak, and Alun has a whistle which he will blow at 3 minutes, just to let you know that time is nearly up. And then at 5 minutes to say that's time is up. I am delighted to welcome all of the candidates from the 4 main parties. We were contacted by one other, a 5th candidate, who we will circulate a statement from this candidate. They are present, so please ask them any questions via the email. Each of the candidates have been, yeah, that's fine. So I think we're ready to start. If you all could kind of keep your opening statements brief, that would be brilliant. And address some of the ways in which you address issues for disabled people in the city. We're going to take you guys in alphabetical order by your names. So can I please start with the Conservative candidate, Alistair Watson. Sorry.
That's a good start. Alistair Watson. I was called Alistair Wilson, I think, on the BBC.
Oh, were you?
So no problems. Yes, very nice to be invited this evening. It's good that there's a good wide range of disability groups and charities that have sponsored this, and it's nice to be able to talk directly to these groups. So I'm very pleased to be here. Tackling inequality in the city is very important. It's important to me, and I'm sure it's important to all the other candidates as well. One of the things I was looking up today was the Bristol Equality Charter, and having a look through that. You know, I'm sure that all of us would sign up to the clauses in that, I would very much like to see that perhaps more widely around Bristol. I hadn't come across it before, I have to say, you know, obviously the City Council is fully signed up to the Equality Charter, and certainly I would want to be fully signed up as mayor if I become the elected mayor of Bristol. And I'd also like to see, and I'd like to promote that through business, you know, and other organisations around the city if I was to be mayor, because I think it's got a lot of very good principles in there that we should all be working towards. I mean, obviously we have a lot of different groups, and I'm sure we in the questioning will be asked about various different aspects of disability, and of, you know, various things will matter more to some groups than others. But certainly, you know, our support for independent living is important, and you know, I would support that as mayor very much. Getting disabled people into employment as well is one of the areas. And as Conservatives, it's one of the specific policies that is always brought up at national level. Funding for access to work, which intends to remove obstacles for people with disabilities in the workplace. That's risen by 25 million in real terms. And the Conservative government wants to work with employers through the Disability Confidence Scheme. And obviously we want to make workplaces more inclusive and helping the number of people with disabilities into employment. It's now up, so the government tells me, up to about 43%. It's gone up 43% since 2013. And the government is also going to publish a national disability strategy, so they have said. So, you know, we can ride on the back of some of the things that are happening in central government by the Conservative government. But, you know, on my part, very much want to make sure that, say, in our planning process, we make access to buildings easier and you know, removing any obstacles that we can for people with certain disabilities. And the employment support, that's one of the things that I would do, I would work on. And a couple of the things that we are doing, you know, in our general manifesto, which is about transport and the environment and housing, I think those all impact in some ways people with disabilities. And I'd certainly want to ensure that we have the input of the disabilities community whenever we're putting policies or thinking about the practical measures we're going to be putting in place. So very much want to engage with the community going forward if I become mayor, and look forward to a very productive dialogue with all groups to do with disabilities. So thank you very much.
Anela, you need to unmute yourself. While you're doing that, shall I welcome Sandy Hore-Ruthven to speak on behalf of the Green Party? Welcome, Sandy.
Good. Well, thank you, Alan, and good to see so many people here. I'll just start by introducing myself, I guess. My day job is as the Chief Executive of the Creative Youth Network. We're a charity that I grew from a very small East Bristol organisation to the largest of its kind in the UK. We support about 10,000 vulnerable young people each year, and that includes a large number of disabled young people. So my key policy is that I want our economy to recover from the pandemic. You know, there's a real risk that some industries and some jobs will be left behind or will really suffer. But there's also an opportunity here to do things differently, to make sure nobody is left behind, regardless of your circumstance. And that, of course, particularly includes those who are disabled. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert in making our city a more accessible place, but from my conversations with disabled people over the years, I will commit to two things. The first is that you're represented and play a full role in the life and the future of the city. And in order to do that, I will listen to your views. And a couple of things have come up in my conversations with disabled people, a couple of examples of where listening has happened and one where it hasn't. And I'll start with the bad one, the one that every person I've spoken to has raised with me, and that is the city centre cycle and pedestrian lanes. They come up again and again. The lack of physical separation, colour separation, the design of the shared space that starts and stops is frankly bad for everybody. And many disabled people have told me of accidents and near misses that have happened. And that's an example of where listening hasn't happened and the design was bad. But there are some really good examples, and young people have raised with me several times, young people in wheelchairs particularly, that when they go to We the Curious, they really feel that they have exactly the same experience as a non-disabled person. The exhibits are at different heights, there's space between the exhibits to move around, buttons and colours and multi-sensory experiences give everyone the chance to learn and have a go at whatever their abilities. And for me, that's the goal that we're aiming for, is to have an equal chance to experience our city. But I absolutely acknowledge that we're a really, really long way from that. I know too, from my own experience, where we rebuilt the youth centre, The Station, which is in the city centre. We worked with young people with physical impairments, autism, sight loss and others. And they acted as consultants to the architects and very much influenced the design, the floor layout, the toilets, the colour schemes, signage, and even things like the sound that the fire alarm makes. And of course, they influence the activities that take place in the building. But I understood there how complicated it is. The building is an old 1930s listed building that can't be rebuilt from scratch. But I'm proud to say that we made the building as really as accessible as I think it can be. And many young people, including the Listening Partnership, meet there. So for me, listening is the key. But I know there is so much more to do, and that there's so many of the gaps have been made worse by the pandemic. I want you to have influence over how adult social care is planned. I want there to be better employment support for individuals, but also training for companies, bringing isolated communities together, because I know that's really important for all of our mental health, and respite care for carers. But I also know that there are many of the things that we need to do to make our city more accessible and a caring place, are also the things that we need to do to tackle things like climate change and our health. I want to invest £10 million in our local high streets to make them the centre of our communities, make them more attractive and accessible, meaning they're more useful to local people. Making our cities and communities more accessible by banning pavement parking if we can, and we'll work with government to do that, is good for access, of course, and many disabled people have told me that there are days that they just can't go out of their house as a result of that, but they also make neighbourhoods more livable places, which reduce our carbon emissions. And of course, the really big one is public transport. A really good public transport system that reaches across our city is good for accessibility, but of course, it's also good for our environment too. So we know that when we listen to disabled people, your views, that we make places more accessible, we spend our money more wisely, and I'm really committed to make sure we're listening to your views and make sure you are part of the discussions as we look to recover our economy from the pandemic and create a city that is a greener and a fairer place.
Thank you very much, Sandy. That was brilliant. I've actually managed to unmute myself this time, so that's good. Okay, so and now I would like to move on to the Labour Party candidate, Marvin Rees, please.
Thanks very much. And yeah, great to be with you today. So I'll share with just my sense of Bristol. The raw material we are grappling with is that this is a very fractured city and a city of contradictions, contrasts. We're very wealthy and there's a lot of opportunity here. It has that culture of being foodie, 2 world-class universities, thriving creative sector, the only part of the country outside the southeast that makes a net contribution to the treasury. And yet we know that this is a city of flourishing and not everyone gets an equal chance to participate in, with 1 in 4 of our children growing out of income deprived housing, 1 in 5 of our children at risk of hunger, which has been a big driver for us over the last 5 years. There are many things that determine people's life chances that sit beyond their hard work, beyond their talents and abilities. And whether people are disabled or not is one of those factors that drives people's life chances. We also know that these inequalities have been compounded by COVID. One of the warnings I've shared with government, with core cities, with the LGA, and with our city partners is that the pandemic will hit those most marginal to the economy first and hardest. and then they will be least well placed to benefit from any upturn when it comes in the economy as well, by definition, having taken that biggest hit. So that is our challenge. We set our stall out around building an inclusive city. Never easy, but that's what we have committed ourselves to. A city in which there is hope and which no one is left behind. And you can see that ripped through the One City plan and our council strategy. But if I list a few things that we've been doing in the name of that, and then something about leadership. So first, I'd say just over the last year, one of the things we did incredibly quickly off the back of COVID was launch the We Are Bristol helpline. And that has proven invaluable, particularly for those people suffering from isolation, social isolation. It was a free phone number that we set up, people at risk of food, people needing medications. And it's a scheme that's got quite a lot of plaudits because of the number of people that signed in. We monitored the number of calls coming in. We had opportunities for neighbours to raise concerns about neighbours they thought were particularly vulnerable. And that's been, like I said, invaluable. And through that, we actually had over 4,000 people volunteer for our COVID effort in Bristol as well, all part of our community resilience. In the last few years, we launched Stepping Up. That's about recognising people getting stuck in the workforce, those inequalities in employment. The first cohort was on Black and Asian people. 60% got promoted. The second cohort and the third cohort were people from Black and minority ethnic communities, but disabled people and women as well, recognising those institutional structural inequalities with employment retention and progression. And I'm pleased to say we had fantastic buy-in from the private sector on that as well. Our Better Lives programme, led by Helen Holland, the commitment in that has been to support people to live in their own homes for longer. And we know that is a challenge around adaptable homes. We've actually got up to 10% of any dwellings of over 50 homes need to be wheelchair accessible or adaptable. The conversation we're having with Nicola Beach is how we can improve that number. It will take a conversation with government, but the argument we want to make is that by spending money from the housing revenue account, the capital money on homes, we can actually reduce the burden on the revenue account that we spend on council services, because people will live with dignity independently in their homes for longer. Temple Court is a massive regeneration scheme in the city, and I know that Nicola took a BPAC around. They've set up a Temple Quarter accessibility group. Temple Quarter, by the way, is about 11,000 homes alongside the conference centre, new train station, new university. So they've set up that group to monitor that regeneration scheme, reviewing all the consultation material, and actually brought the Partners Network Rail into that partnership as well, to make sure that the regeneration of the train station is inclusive. And on the clean air zone, which is coming through as well, in our mitigations, we've proposed to government exemptions for blue badge holders, proposing that disabled vehicles are fully exempt from the CAS, in line with the national framework, but we've got to get the support for that. So many things. I'd also say there's something important. It's just about doing things for people. That's not the approach. The approach is to do things with people. We've started the work to set up the Commission on Disabled Equality, alongside the Women's Commission and the Commission on Race Equality. And I say actually that speaks to the importance of this one city approach in the city office, because where the political system has failed to include people, we can set up these bodies with groups like WECIL to make sure the voice is heard. And also, I really appreciate the congratulations for the Bristol Equality Charter. So very much driven by Asher Craig, my deputy mayor. And the importance of that is it's not just a Bristol City Council document. We put that together to get the buy-in of the whole collection of city institutions, from our universities, our unions, our private sector as well, to set a city standard on inclusion and accessibility across employment, physical space, and more. So I look forward to the conversation this evening.
Thank you, Marvin. Please can we now move to Caroline Gooch, the Liberal Democrat candidate.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I just wanted to cover a little bit of work in employment that we've got in our national policy. Unlike Alistair, I can't say that our government are going to put it in, because obviously we're Lib Dems, we're not in government. But I thought it was worth covering because it actually covers some of the things that we'd like to move into the city strategy anyway. So things like access to work schemes and employers, raising employers' awareness of that, with flexible working and a day one right, because I think the flexible working and the ability to meet over Zoom has been very helpful for people, and being able to work from home as well. We'd like actually that large employers who currently have to do publish their data on gender pay gaps also include data for disability pay gaps, as well as ethnicity and LGBT as well, so that we can actually see what's going on with how much disabled people are getting paid, and whether they're actually getting paid equitably as well. We'd have a right to work from home from day one, if possible, and improve access to work and adjustment passports. And then things that we've actually got in our local manifesto are things like increasing accessibility to public places and transport by making more stations wheelchair accessible, improving the framework on blue badges is a national thing. We want to ban discrimination in private hire vehicles and taxis. And I want to put disability front and centre of all planning, including in new housing developments. It's absolutely vital for public areas. So any railway station that has more than one platform should have lifts for every platform. We want to build on the success of the Bristol Bath cycle route to surrounding areas and ensure greater access for people with disabilities to that area. Better joined up public transport across Bristol and disabled parking provision as well by public transport and pedestrianised zones. On streets, when you look around and walk down the streets, you find they're full of all sorts of hazards and obstacles. So I'd like us to work really on easy to navigate footpaths, plenty of crossing points. There are a lot of quite busy roads in Bristol that have nowhere safe to cross. I know Cranbrook Road is one that I'm aware of that's actually close to a school as well. There's no crossing points. And I think we need to roll out limited hours residence parking zones to discourage commuter parking or stop cars from blocking pavements. I know Sandy's already touched on this. Bike lanes separate from footpaths, clearly demarcated, different colour, like Sandy said, so it's easy to distinguish. Cobbles look pretty. They're not very good with people who've got balance problems or on crutches or wheelchairs. Also, because we're a multi-level city, I'd like there to be lifts between different levels of the city. I think the Trenchard Street car park used to have a lift that people could use to get up to the BRI. And purpose-built, well-designed extra care housing. And then in schools, I definitely want to increase the provision in mainstream education for those, the support and provision for mainstream education for those that need it, more dyslexia support as well. And then on SEND provision, I want to make sure the council lives up to its duty to provide school places for every child appropriate to their needs, with 10-year projections on provision of school places, accounting for demographic change. I want to make sure that EHCP applications are dealt with by named caseworkers within the 20-week legal deadline, and that the council has the capacity to deal with the casework, the assessments and the annual reviews for those children, because we don't think anyone should have to fight through tribunals to get their child's needs met. We need all school SENCOs to be fully trained and supported in their roles. And we need to reduce fixed term exclusions and unlawful exclusions and part-time timetables which disproportionately affect pupils who ascend. We have also got a policy of support for young carers with a support system to provide relief. And then in mental health, we want to set up a good neighbour network to support people at risk, increase early intervention through greater funding for mental health services, a scheme to reward employers who invest in the mental well-being of their employees, work with universities and colleges to establish a student charter on mental health, and make sure that the council is not working with institutions that lock up young people who have learning disabilities. And then finally, we've got a couple of things for people with like long-term health conditions. Obviously, the clean air quality improvements are vital, especially for people who've got breathing problems. And we've worked with CCGs to improve the number of GPs in the city and improve health and social care integration. Sorry,
Thank you, Caroline.
that was the 5-minute whistle, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, it was. Thank you. Sorry to cut you off there. So, okay, before we move forward, we've just realised and just been able to resolve the problem with the BSL interpreter. We're very, very sorry that there has been a problem, and TPT have agreed that from the recording of the webinar today, we will write up a transcript and send that out to everybody who needs it by Tuesday. So sincere apologies for the interruption. Okay, so we are now ready to go on to questions. The questions have been circulated to the audience, or most of them have anyway, prior to the meeting. I think we've got over 30 questions now, so if the candidates could please try to be very concise with their responses, that would be amazing. We're going to go through the pre-submitted questions in order and ask each candidate to give their responses. And the questions will be read out by Thomas Pocklington Trust staff. If we get through all the pre-submitted questions, which you're not really expecting to, but if we do, we will go to any questions asked on the emails today. The candidates have kindly agreed to give a written response following the meeting to any questions that are not reached tonight. So please don't worry if your questions haven't been addressed today. Okay, so without further ado, Nadia, please can we have the first question? Can't hear you, Nadia.
You're muted. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hello, hi. So our first question is from Trish Caverley, and she says, the continued rise in pedestrianising roads and areas, for example, the Old City and Cotton Hill, has resulted in a number of disabled blue badge holders being marginalised and excluded from areas previously visited and enjoyed. While many blue badge owners both understand the need for the CAZ and support it in principle, many will not be able to afford to replace their cars after the 12-month exemption period. What 3 practical solutions is your party offering to ensure disabled people who are not able to use public transport or cycle have equal access to the city?
Thank you, Nadia. So I'd like to go to each of the candidates for your responses, please. We will stick to the same order that we've already been working with. And so, first of all, can we please go to Alistair?
Hello, right. Yeah, I mean, pedestrianisation, I mean, I mean, I suppose this is one of the things that we do need to consult better on then if this has happened, because pedestrianisation should be a good thing, and I'm presuming this is because the parking has been restricted, and I mean, surely that can be sorted. It's, you know, perhaps close by there must be some other parking places where we can get blue badge parking spaces for people so that they can come in. I think it's one of those ones that we'd really have to see, and you know, I think something's failed if the case is that you know, people with disabilities are finding it difficult to get into the centre now and use the facilities there. As far as the CAZ is concerned, I do know that the plan at the moment is that blue badge holders would be exempt regardless of what vehicle they had. But as you say, there is a period and then it would be reviewed. You know, I mean, if I was mayor, I think that the review would be, you know, let's give people with blue badges longer than just the initial period, and I, you know, I would think that probably, you know, Marvin and others might say the same. You know, that it's not going to stop at that point if it is still seen as being discriminatory in any way. So, you know, I'd certainly want to see it continue to make sure that people with blue badges, regardless of their vehicles, but we would want to encourage the change, you know, changing to clean vehicles in the future.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you. Could Sandy go next, please?
Yeah, so a similar answer. Look, where we make changes in the city that we need to make, like pedestrianisation, bus lanes, and other things that will help people to move more generally into public transport, there has to be consultation first for those who live locally, for those who can't access spaces in any other way. And that has to be a key. If we're going to change our city, we have to consult with everybody. And this, in my first presentation, was what I mean about listening to people. I think we make mistakes in city design when we don't listen to people and communities first. But we can get it right if we do listen to people and communities first. And very often, I was up in St Andrews today, I was down in Southville a few days ago, looking at livable neighbourhoods, and you talk to people there, including to disabled people. Often they have the answers, they know how they move around their spaces, and can often tell the experts what the best way to do something is. So that for me is key. On the CAZ, I would agree with Alistair. I think we should have at least a 5-year exemption period to ensure that disabled people are not excluded from the city centre unfairly.
Thank you, Sandy. Can we go to Marvin next, please?
Thank you. And again, if I can just refer to the Transport Board that Dave Redwell sits on with others, this is one of the reasons why some of the groups that we've set up in the city to help shape city policy through the One City Plan are so important, because we can bring those voices, experts by policy background and research, experts by lived experience, into shaping, you know, our city priorities. It's one of the reasons also we had such a kind of a hard discussion with government over the clean air zone, because we were saying it's a very blunt instrument, a result of the government failing to take action on air quality over the last few years. So we end up with this, and why we've been stressing the importance of a just transition. But in terms of what we'll do around the city centre taking this on, one is in our conversation with government now, we submitted the clean air zone plans, which is a very rigid framework we have to fit into. The proposal is for a 1-year exemption on blue badge holders, but with a request of government to allow us to review that after a year to see the impact it has on compliance, to see if we can extend it as well. And again, the challenge is that there is a legal threat on national government that again gets rolled down into local government, but we'll continue to come in and make the case for as many mitigations as we can. But we're under that legal threat. We're also proposing that disabled passenger vehicles, as I said at the beginning, are fully exempt from the CAS. As per the national framework. But again, it's that ongoing conversation with government to make sure they will make space for that for us. And the proposals we've put in place, because we recognise that people, you know, not everyone can afford to transition. I think it's a conversation that's been sadly lacking in some of the lobbying that's happened around the clean air zone, that financial inequality. But one of the cases we made for government before clean air was actually a headline issue, was that we need financial support to help people transition to newer vehicles. They are offering some financial support. Our concern is that it will be inadequate. Outside of that, can I just say for taxis as well? So our requirement is for 100% of Hackney carriages to be wheelchair accessible to the city, and obviously they can still access the city. Other local authorities around us do not have that level, but where we're licensing, that's a requirement we've had, and we have actually prosecuted, take action against drivers where they've not allowed guide dogs, for example. So on all fronts, on that public transport, that private access, we're pushing forward on that as best we can.
Thank you, Marvin. And can we go to Caroline, please?
Hi. So I think that in the CAS, I don't think it's right at all that that the disabled badges should only be valid for a year in the CAS, especially as a lot of disabled vehicles are adapted. They're very, very expensive to adapt. It's not a quick process either. And so it's much less likely that once a disabled vehicle has been bought that it's going to be changed that regularly. So I think the disabled badge holders ought to be exempt for as long as required. Really, I don't think a year is long enough. And pedestrian spaces, yes, I've argued about this actually in policy groups and things already, that every time you pedestrianize a space, you make it further that people have to walk. And you really need to make sure that at the edges of the pedestrian spaces, all around them, there are parking spaces and cab drop-off points. And disabled parking spaces, sorry, and cab drop-off points. And also, I think anywhere where you have a large pedestrianised area, you need to provide disabled, little shopping cart buggies, and mobility scooters, like that we have in Cabot Circus. So obviously in Cabot Circus, there's disabled parking on the ground floor and the disability scooters there, which you can borrow. We need to have that system pretty much everywhere where we have a pedestrian zone. So if you can't get to an area without walking for quite a long way, we are definitely failing people. Obviously, not everybody who's disabled has a wheelchair. Some people just have extreme difficulty walking, but don't have access to a wheelchair. People with long-term health issues can really struggle as well to access areas. So this needs to be baked in to every planning decision, is if I am struggling to walk, can I get to this space? It's got to be central for everything that we do.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, so I think we can move on to our second question. Conor, do you have a question for us?
Yes, hello. This one is posed by the Bristol Disability Equality Forum. One of the biggest barriers disabled people in Bristol experience is the lack of accessible transport. What will you do to ensure that Bristol has the amount of accessible transport it needs, not just on paper, but in reality?
Thank you, Conor. So in the same order again, can we go to Alistair first, please?
Okay. Are you going to change the order later on? It's just that it feels like it's sort of not quite equal for everybody if we all go through the same order. But yeah, so I get first goes. We
weren't planning to, but
okay. I mean, that makes it somewhat difficult for us because we can't reply to each other. Or I mean, nearly always on these things you do randomized changes, but up to you. It's your show. I was just asking. Yes, when we all have transport policies, we all want to bring in cleaner, better, more comfortable buses, and eventually a mass transport system, a mass transit system, which would include perhaps trams, certainly rail we need to bring back in. So we've got a whole raft of transport policies, and all those should be accessible, and we really do need them to be accessible. I'm pleased about the taxis that Marvin has been speaking about, the accessibility there. That is always a difficulty, and we've all heard stories of taxis sort of slowing down and then having a look and then heading off and not picking up somebody. That should be absolutely banned and hopefully illegal, really. If a taxi comes, then it should take the ride. So we certainly, all those policies for new transport systems, it will be as Caroline said, you know, baked into the process. We need to make sure that that's how we do it, and we need to make sure that we consult with the groups. And it's not just wheelchair users or those with mobility problems. It's obviously all other types of disability, and they all have their challenges. And you know, what works for one is not going to be the solution for somebody else. So we need to look at all those options, and I would certainly, as mayor, want to make sure that that would happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair, and also thank you for your feedback about changing the order of people. We are going to do that in the next question, so thanks for that. Okay, so could we go to Sandy next, please?
Great, thank you. So public transport is the key issue for the whole city, I would say. It's vital for tackling climate change. It's an equalities issue. People from all backgrounds should have proper access to the whole city, to jobs, to training, to see friends and relatives and enjoy culture and everything that the city has to offer. The difficulty is that this government isn't putting money into public transport, so we have to look at where we can find alternatives. So the key thing I would look to do is to repurpose, work with the West of England Mayor and repurpose our road building budget, which is potentially hundreds of millions of pounds, which would be a real game changer. Would allow us to build potentially new metro bus routes, and of course make them more accessible. We need to extend our bus lanes. I'd like to see eventually buses moving through our city like a train, stopping only at bus stops and traffic lights. That way, public transport is good for all, and will allow everybody access to the city. Cabs too are important, and they're a key part of our system. I know many disabled people say it's quite difficult getting a cab before 9 AM during the rush hour. So we need to look at licensing and how we make sure that cabs are available at all times of day and night. And finally, making sure, again, my original point, that you're represented when we're talking with Network Rail or First Bus, to make sure that as we roll out new bus fleets, whether they're electric or biogas or whatever, that they are properly accessible and usable by disabled people.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Can we go to Marvin next, please?
Thank you. Can I just say on the question of leadership to start with, this is where the Commission on disabled equality will become so important, along with how the Women's Commission has been able to really lead on women's issues in the city, including the gender pay gap, for example, and violence against women and girls. The Commission on Race Equality, again, has been able to look at the race pay gap and look at inequalities in education. This Commission as well will be able to take a leadership and really push into some of the key issues in the city, homes and transport, among them. But in the meantime, what we do actually have at the moment is a public transport equality group with SARI, Standing Against Racism and Inequality, as you know, and disabled people are included in that. And it's through that board that we've been able to make the space for people to really push organisations like Network Rail, First Bus, to improve accessibility. And that has actually included lobbying government to make stations like Stapleton Road and Lawrence Hill, which are kind of running sores in the city, really accessible. And I've actually got £200,000 allocated to Stapleton Road already. But every time we walk past the station, we see that people can't even go from platform to platform. We know that it's just not accessible. In terms of the rollout of pedestrianisation as well, it's worth just saying the car parks are still available. And there is going to be an increase in disabled bays around the area as well to be able to get people as close as possible. But the car parks and the buildings will still be available. Buses is an interesting one as well. So when I had a look around some of our biogas buses, the nice thing is not only are they biogas, but actually the chassis of the bus gets rid of a large step that was about 2/3 of the way down the bus. So it is longer. It has more space for wheelchairs, so it's more and it's more accessible because it doesn't have that step. So there are more seats at the at the ground level, as well. Yeah, I think I recognise there's a long way to go, but the aim is to actually have 100% of our fleet biogas. But those are just some of the things that have been going on. But I think, unlocking that leadership into the city through the commission in the future will be incredibly important.
Thank you, Marvin. And Caroline, please.
Hi. So, yeah, one of the things I wrote down while Marvin was talking was about kneeling buses. I know that's a thing in London. I just have to ask. Maybe Marvin can actually answer it, whether or not there's actually level access from the street onto the buses, or whether they have a kneeling capacity so that they actually can tilt down to let people with wheelchairs on. Can I go back to Marvin to ask that?
Yeah, I think the chassis are lower down to be more accessible, and then obviously we have some raised pavements for people to get on. But I couldn't vouch for every bus in the fleet, but certainly the new cohort are more accessible on those levels. Okay, thanks. I think that, yeah, that's the sort of thing that I'd be looking to make sure is that there's kind of a seamless entryway, because if you're in a wheelchair, obviously you want to be able to just roll straight on without having a big gap. And this is one of the things that really worries me about trains. As a small person, I have real difficulty getting on a train, and I'm able-bodied. I don't know how you do it if you have disabilities, because there is a massive step and sometimes an enormous hole that you can fall down. And I'd like to see what we can do about that. I know that some stations provide help and assistance, but having once asked for it when I wasn't well, it can take a long time to come. And I think maybe we really need to look at that, and maybe it's something that we could actually push for at national level, to ask for, when rolling stock is upgraded, to have trains that have those steps that come out, that they have them in America and they have them in a lot of European cities, that the steps actually come out down towards the platform, so that people don't have to make this enormous, nearly a metre sometimes, leap of faith onto a train. I think we could, on mass transit, some cities now are looking at tram trains as a way of extending their rail network. I know obviously the Metrobus has the raised platforms, so again it's all a case of kind of being able to roll straight on and have a seamless entry without a gap, so that you can walk as a level platform onto the transport. So yeah, those are things I definitely would like to look at. And if all the buses are not level access, then I'd like to push for that, to get that.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, so question number 3. Alan, do you have a question?
I do. The question is on e-scooters. You will all be aware of the amount of e-scooters we now have in the city, and there's increasing concern about how badly parked many of them are, and that they are running on pavements, which is a real concern to disabled people in terms of accessibility, and that is both the illegally owned scooters and the trial scooters. Could the candidates please tell us what immediate action they would take to address the issue of e-scooters that are both badly parked and are causing problems by riding down pavements? Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, so we're going to change the order around a little bit this time. So can we please go to Marvin first?
Thanks. Yeah, so we recognise this is a challenge. I mean, because it's a trial, we're in constant, in terms of the VOI, I'll talk about the private scooters in a minute, but in terms of VOI, we're constantly feeding back to them about managing the scooter fleet. Obviously, they're incredibly popular and a key part, certainly our first last mile for some people within Bristol, and offering us real transport offers. but we're asking them, and it's a technology they have to improve what they call their geofencing, which is the way the satellite controls the scooters, so they can't drive, for example, through Southmead Hospital grounds, but to improve their geofencing so that it can tackle scooters being driven on pavements, but also to hold users accountable for where and how they dispose of their scooters at the end. There is a challenge that we're asking them to take on, and it's one I don't quite understand, because when someone rents a scooter, they have to park it in a certain location, and I see scooters, some left around, and they're clearly not in the parking location, and it can't be locked until it is in that location. So I can only guess that people are continuing to be charged for the time that scooter's out. So that's something that we've raised with Voy as well. But Kai has actually picked up this as the challenges, and has met with a company that's developing an app, and I don't know what their app is, but Kai, as our transport lead, is on this at the moment, that warns visually impaired pedestrians if an e-scooter is being ridden close by. And we are going to follow up on that to see how useful it could be for the city. The private scooters is a slightly different matter, because obviously they're not legal, and that's an issue for prosecution. And for us, it has to be about working with the police, who are stretched, but having working with the police and government about what powers can be given to us and resources to take action on people who are riding scooters illegally on pavements and being a hazard to other people in the city.
Thank you, Marvin. Can I go to Caroline next, please?
Oh yeah, so I would prefer the e-scooters to have parking bays on the street. So take over a parking space, we could get 30 of them in one car parking space. I think, the whole point of them is to encourage us to use them instead of cars. So they really shouldn't be left on the street. And I'm surprised we're doing something that isn't dockless after the experience with the yellow bikes. So yes, I'd prefer these to be docked stations so that they're tidy. But if they're not, I'd prefer that Voy was setting up temporary parking spots for them on the street, taking up a car parking space, clearly demarcated, so they're not being left everywhere. And yes, they shouldn't be on the pavements. People are supposed to be riding them on the road. I would want to put in segregated cycle lanes, as I talked about in my intro, and the e-scooters could use those, and e-bikes as well. So I think it would be sensible to plan for having e-scooters and e-bikes in the cycle lanes, and make the cycle lanes just a little bit bigger so that there's room for everybody, and we keep them off the pavements. I think the pavements have to be for people, for pedestrians, and not for wheeled vehicles other than obviously prams, pushchairs and wheelchairs.
Thank you, Caroline. And can I go to Alistair next, please?
Yeah, thank you. I've had a go on the scooters. They're great fun, and I think in some ways, this is Bristol, and I think they're a novelty, and people are just coming out of lockdown, and I've seen every sort of transgression going on. There've been, people who obviously are too young to have a driver's license have been riding them, so presumably their parents have somehow said, well, use my driver's license and you can get on it, and they've been using them for fun. They've been driving them or riding them on the pavements. I've seen two people on one e-scooter. I've seen the lot, and it's a bit worrying. But of course the parking is, I think, what specifically this question is about, and I'm with Caroline on this one. I think that they do need docking stations. Remember, this is a trial. This is a first step, and I would want all the disability groups to feed back. I mean, obviously this trial is the regional mayor, the WECIL mayor. It's not being run by our council, but we need to get that feedback, and we need to sort this out. I think it would get better to a certain extent over time, because as I say, I think people are using them for fun and novelty purposes at the moment. They are meant to be more of a commuting or going into town for a show or something, you know, sort of one-way journey, then picking up another one to have another one-way journey on the way back. They're not meant to be, you know, sort of you know, ride around and have a bit of fun with your mates. So yeah, it's a trial. We've got to give that feedback. We need to improve it. Yes, there's too many on pavements. I've seen them too. They get in the way, and obviously people who have got some disability of whatever type will find it difficult. So, you know, and it's not actually just people with disabilities, people pushing buggies and children and all the rest of it. So I think there's quite a bit to do. I think they are in the mix. We're not going to stop them in the future. We've just got to sort of work out how they can be run safely and well in the future.
Thank you, Alistair. Sandy.
Thank you. So really much of what everyone else has said, this is a trial. I do think they're a good thing. I think they're a new and innovative way of us getting around the city that's relatively pollution free. And it's something that we should encourage. I'm pleased to hear and would have thought that there are some technical solutions about whether people are riding on pavements where they leave their scooters at the end. I am supportive of putting docking bays in, particularly in car parking spaces. I think that would be a good thing. And the key is that users become accountable. My guess is that most people who use them wouldn't want to be seen as causing trouble to other pedestrians and other people, other road users. So I think part of it needs to be awareness raising. And again, the technology can be good. You know, your phone's on the front. Does it tell you that you're, you know, shouldn't be riding on the pavement or whatever? I think there's a longer term question though, as we develop these new forms of transport, we need to build the infrastructure for it. Separated cycle lanes are good for cycling. I think e-scooters can use them if we really invest. And again, the repurposing of our road building budget is a way of investing properly in separated cycle lanes. I think that would solve much of the problem that we have with e-scooters riding on pavements now. So there's a short-term solution, talking to the company, putting your voices forward, but there is a long-term solution that we have to have a proper, sustainable transport system in our city. And I believe that the Green Party have been committed to that for a long time, and we're the party to roll that out across the city.
Thank you, Sandy. Okay, so I have one more question before we take a 10-minute break. Nadia, do you have a next question for us, please? Might be muted.
Oh, yep, just one moment.
There you are, yeah.
Right, so I have a question from Steve Ewens, and it says, I warmly welcome the work begun to set up a Disability Equality Commission in Bristol. Will the candidates clearly commit this evening to carry on the work setting up the commission and to restart the recruitment process for the chair of the commission so that they are appointed by the end of July and recruitment of commissioners can begin in the autumn? Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Okay, so Marvin, go first, please.
Yeah, thank you. So the answer is yes. It's a piece of work we've started, and if we were to win the election, it's a piece of work we'd obviously be very keen to continue and to complete. We did start work on the recruitment for the commission, but we wanted to make sure, you know, we had the right people around the table so that it's a success. And the important thing is that we as an authority don't do that recruitment. It's disabled people themselves that identify the breadth of experience and expertise that's needed, on disabled issues, but on issue of housing, transport, employment, education, environment, all those issues that are going to be really important for the Commission to get its to get its head around and set its own work plan and its agenda for the coming years. I mean, just on that, I think amongst the things I would throw into the mix there would actually be about political representation, because we are talking about leadership here, and I think it's been a fact that the political process within in Bristol of elections has absolutely failed to be as representative and as inclusive as a city as it should have been. It's getting better over recent years, but it has not been engaged with Bristol, and so we need to create places for new kinds of voices that are not systematically heard in the city's leadership to be heard and to have power and to have influence over what the city does, not just the city council, I say as well, but the city. But ultimately, we want those voices to also influence the political process as well, so people come into leadership and begin to take places in the chamber shaping policy. So again, I just say it just speaks to the importance of that one city approach, that we can go to the city to create space for those new voices to be shaping our city's future life.
Thank you, Marvin. We have Sandy next, please.
Yeah, thank you. And again, the short answer is yes, absolutely. We would continue the work of setting up the Equality Commission, Disability Equality Commission. The thing I would add to that, though, is that sometimes these sorts of commissions are great sort of headline thing, but they mustn't be the only place where disabled people's voices are heard. You know, we've already talked about scooters, pedestrianisation in local areas, access to public transport. So it's really important that disabled people are heard across the city as we look at how we redesign our neighbourhoods and try to become less reliant on the car. And that's why I'm really keen to make sure that our councillors are really representative and listen to their communities and take the voice of their community to local decisions and to the chamber as a whole. I want to make sure that I listen to councillors and listen to communities and listen to disabled people across the city on those local issues that may not reach the Disability Equality Forum, Commission, because it's important that we tackle these issues across Bristol.
Thank you, Sandy. Caroline, please.
Sorry, was that me? I couldn't hear you there.
Caroline, sorry, Caroline.
Caroline.
Sorry, I thought I'd answered this question, which was this one asked about. I didn't.
No, I think I started with Marvin.
Oh, you'd started with me in this one. Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Alistair then. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So setting up the Disabilities Commission. My view is slightly different. I worry a lot about the way Marvin has structured the groups and the way he has avoided democratic scrutiny. And by setting up a commission sounds really good, but paradoxically, it can be worse, because what you do is you get a group of people who come together and it becomes more exclusive than inclusive if we're not careful. I'm not against getting inclusivity and bringing people in, but I think to set up some very structured commissions around the mayor and the mayor's office and his one city, he's moving away from the real democracy, which are the councillors that we have, the scrutiny that goes on there, and there will be scrutiny of all these things, and disabled people come to those scrutiny commissions, they hear their voice heard, and they can go through the democratic council process. And I think there should be advisory groups, there should be forums over specific issues, certainly. And, you know, we should have channels through all the time as councillors to the disability community. But what I would be looking at is, do we really need a commission that is really going outside of our democracy again, as Marvin does all the time, and therefore takes us away? Just to say, I mean, I would have a rainbow cabinet. I would have a cross-party cabinet if I was mayor of Bristol, and you know, within that there could be representatives from all walks of life, and you know, hopefully, you know, those people, some of those will have a strong bonds with disability groups, and we could channel it through that. So I'm very much more about democracy than going outside the democracy and setting up loads of institutions which are not democratic.
Thank you, Alistair. Okay, so on that note, I think we're ready for a 10-minute break. After the break, my Sight Loss Council colleague is going to take over the chairing. So it's been fascinating listening to the candidates today. Thank you very much from me. And I will sign off and Liz will take over back after a 10-minute break.
Good evening, everyone. My Alexa timer makes it 10 minutes are up. So Liz, are you there?
Yeah, but my video doesn't seem to be on at the moment.
Okay.
Your video is on, Liz.
Oh, it's on now. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
okay.
When you're ready, please, Liz.
Okay. So welcome back after the break. As Anela would have told you, my name is Liz Illingworth. I'm another of the Bristol Sight Loss Council. As you probably realise, we're running a little bit behind, but we sort of expected that might happen. And some of the questions might be slightly in a different order than was expected. But without further ado, I'll move on to Alun to ask the next question.
Thank you. I will be altering the order to get through questions, but as we said, candidates have agreed to give written answers in the next couple of days to the questions we don't reach. So the next question is on social care services, and the question reads, charging on social care services are a real tax on disabled people and are discriminatory and prevent disabled people from living full independent lives with dignity. Will all the candidates say whether they agree with that statement? And also, will they commit to using existing powers like other councils do to remove iniquitous charges on social care for disabled people?
Yeah, and I'm going to put this first question to Sandy.
Thanks. Can I ask back? Can you elaborate a little more on what sorts of charges you're talking about?
Certainly, Sandy. So basically, for services like personal assistance and for all kinds of social care services, there are charging policies that are across all councils that central government require local authorities to carry out, that basically charge disabled people for services through income assessment. Okay. I'm going to have to hold my hands up and go, I don't really know the detail of this. So if it's okay, I'm going to go away and look into it. If that's all right, I'm afraid I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll move straight on to Marvin. Can you deal with this one?
Yeah, we do. I mean, you know, I agree. I absolutely recognise the additional financial pressures on disabled people, particularly around, you know, and that's compounded not just by disproportionate levels of unemployment, but also the services people need. It is an area of huge challenge for local authorities. You may see the Local Government Association predictions that show that on the current trajectory after 10 years of austerity, and I don't like to throw that word around, but it is true that we've had, you know, increase in demand for services, but without the commensurate increase in financing for local authorities, that the only thing local authorities will be able to afford in a few years is adult social care and a little bit of children's services. Is that squeeze? That's not a Bristol issue, that is a national issue. And by far the largest chunk of our council tax spend is on adult social care, more than any other area of council services combined. You can see that and find that breakdown in our council reports. We have pledged to help adults in need of care to live independent lives for longer in their own homes. I mentioned earlier on looking at how we might be able to use the housing revenue account, which is what we use to adapt homes, retrofit homes and all the rest of it, to make sure that our homes are more adaptable, and use that as a way of recognizing that we can support people to live in their homes, and by providing adaptable homes in balanced communities, actually they can live independently for longer and not have to require some of those services as well. But it is a major financial challenge that does require national government support. We have been awaiting the government's plan, in inverted commas, for social care. That was promised 2 years ago. It hasn't landed with us yet, like many other national commitments that have been made. But the shortfall on the funding of adult social care and the needed response from national government is something that local authorities urgently needed. If I can just say, just around that, we're doing our best as a local authority to make sure we are recognising the financial burdens placed on people, particularly during COVID. The retention of our council tax, 100% council tax reduction scheme, is just one of those interventions that we're trying to look at the wider financial pressures on people. But I have no easy answers to this. It is a wicked challenge facing local authorities in general, but facing disabled people in particular. I recognise that.
Thank you. Caroline, are you able to deal with this question? Caroline?
Yeah, just moving, sorry, just unmuting. Yes, so also it's something that I don't know that much about. I know the problem with social care is obviously it's not really linked to, it's not integrated properly with the NHS, and it's not provided at a national level like it should be, like the NHS is. And we really want to get the two integrated, and like Marvin, we're waiting for the government to do something on this. We really need to have social care integrated with the NHS, and it's not fair that it's down to councils to provide these services, because it falls to councils with a higher proportion of elderly people to provide more services when they've actually got less income coming in. So it is something that we need to look at. One thing that we are quite keen to do is to obviously carry out a review of support for adult social care, so that we can make sure that the best services are being provided, and find out where we can help when they're not. And in some ways, there are ways that maybe you could circumvent some of the costs by expanding and improving partnerships between elderly homeowners and potential live-in younger carers. And it's not necessarily for elderly, it could be for disabled people as well. So that by literally get a live-in carer who's maybe a student or a younger person who is able to provide care a certain number of hours a week in return for free accommodation. So there are ways that we can look at it, and I don't think it's right. Obviously, I don't agree that that there are these inequalities, that people should have to pay for them, and I would like to remove the inequality charges for people. But yeah, I don't know that much about it, so I would love to hear more, please.
Thank you, Caroline. Alistair.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in this area either, I have to say, but I suppose what I would say is that one of the things about being a mayor of a city is that it is a sort of semi-independent type role from government, and I do have to say that I'm not totally proud of my own party and who's in government on this one. We have been told 2 years ago or so that you know, social care will be looked at, and you know, we all know that there's, you know, probably a coming crisis if nothing really is done on it, because I absolutely agree with what Marvin says, that, you know, the huge amount of money that local authorities have to spend on social care means that they have to cut budgets on everything else because it's a statutory right. So to actually say, well, can we spend more is a real challenge to any local authority at the moment. So I'm hoping that the bill will get to Parliament, that there will be some more centralised funding of this. I'm not sure whether it should go to the NHS or whether it should be funneled through local authorities, but it's a really difficult area. It's really absolutely driven by the finances that we have in council. But certainly, you know, I would do everything I could to look at this. It is an inequality, and you know, in an ideal world, should not happen.
Yeah, thank you for your answers. Right, Alan, the next question.
Thank you. Deaf and hard of hearing people have been asking public sector bodies like the council for years to provide real-time BSL interpreter and text provision at all meetings, public meetings. Will the candidates commit to providing this, and what other steps will you take to meet the needs of deaf and hard of hearing people in Bristol?
Thank you, Alan. Sandy, I'm going to you again first.
So I'm again, I'm not an expert. I don't know how much, you know, I'm sure cost is an issue here, but in principle, absolutely, BSL, other languages, closed captions and text should be available for all meetings. I again, not knowing the detail, but I think I'm sure technology is a helpful thing in this area. I'm actually keen that we carry on not just videoing and YouTubing council meetings, but that people can continue to meet on Zoom and other similar things, because I know that we can that text is available. And much easier to use. Other issues that deaf and hard of hearing people have spoken to me about, particularly, is around isolation. And I think for me, it's really important that we both give and fund groups and organisations and charities that bring people together. And I think it's really important. I was just in this meeting, I was just before this meeting, I was meeting with voluntary sector providers, and many of whom I know work with disabled people, including those who are deaf and hard of hearing. And core funding is a really key and important part of making sure that deaf and hard of hearing people get the services that they need. So we would prioritise that within the Bristol Impact Fund. The other thing I think as well, as Greens, we want to create communities in our city. We are looking to invest £10 million in local high streets to make them more accessible, to make them the hub of their communities. And I want to make sure that brings communities together. I'd like a city that is a 15-minute city, so that within a 15-minute walk, or that there is that you have all the amenities that you need, whether that's a community centre, GP surgeries, and you know, those and other local shops and those kinds of things. So yeah, for me, that's really important. Getting information to deaf and hard of hearing people too. Again, those networks of groups and organisations is really important. So making sure that they're properly funded and receive the information as quickly and in the right format is vital.
Thank you very much. Alistair.
In an ideal world, we'd all, you know, every meeting would have a BSL interpreter. I'm just amazed at how good Paul is on this. I can see that it's he's right up onto it, which is brilliant. And but again, I think it's, you know, it's probably comes down to financial implications of that. I think if any person who's a deaf person or hard of hearing wants to come to council meetings, then we should provide it. I think we try to. Or I remember when I was a councillor, we would have an interpreter there if we were working on some issue which you know, deaf people would want to be involved with. But also if they want to come and, you know, to a meeting where, you know, it isn't you know, a specific topic, but that, you know, that's to do with deaf people, but you know, could be anything else. We should have BSL interpreters, but I suspect it's a financial issue, and I'm hoping that technology will help in certain ways. I think that's getting better and better all the time, although not as perfect as an interpreter would be. So I do my best, given what sort of budgets we have available and how we would apportion those budgets.
Thank you, Alistair. Marvin.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, this was a challenge that was brought really to us last summer. I met with the Deaf Wears the Interpreter campaign, and they're on their way to on their way to London to raise, to take a challenge to government about the lack of BSL on the press conferences that were going out from the Prime Minister every day. I mean, it has been one of the kind of ingrained inequalities that there are certain people who were impacted disproportionately by COVID, and then they can be most marginal from getting the communications they needed. And many of the interventions around COVID are about information and knowledge. Remember, it's, you know, hands, face, space. These are not big health service interventions. These are personal practice, lifestyle, knowing, understanding the principles of transmission of the virus as well. And shockingly, I think 60% of those people that died from COVID were disabled people as well. So again, we can see the disproportionate burden on people's shoulders. So they brought that challenge and asked us to take up that challenge to take to government on a lack of BSL and accessibility in the communications. We also brought that, which we did. We also brought that challenge in-house. So I was running Facebook Lives every other Wednesday. I just make myself available and anyone can, you know, join and ask a question and offer a challenge. And we introduced BSL on that. And I will say that there was a challenge. It's something that we just went and did, first of all, because we thought this makes us accessible, and then realized that there were some people being excluded, and introduced BSL into that. And now that's a standard part of what we do. What we just looking, I did actually recently just have a look through the YouTube videos as well of some of the council meetings, and what I noticed was there was no subtitles on those meetings as well, even after the fact. So again, technology is there now. There should be no excuse, and that's certainly something we'll be raising with democratic services to make sure that we're proactive in meeting that challenge of accessibility, not just reactive when issues are raised. As it stands, if people raise they have needs, then provision should be made in all our meetings. I think that is existing practice. If it's not being met, then we need to know. But if I just say that again, that comes into the point of leadership. What we need to do is move beyond the idea that there's a group of leaders who listen to people who are on the margins. We need people who are outside of leadership to become leaders. So actually it is inherent in the way city leadership thinks. The commission, getting elected, sitting in the magistracy, all these places where life is being shaped, we need to bring greater diversity, greater inclusion to those people who occupy positions of leadership, be they elected or in unelected positions of leadership as well.
Thank you. And Caroline.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but just because we're short of money, it's not a reason to sideline people and exclude them from democracy. Absolutely, and just the idea that people should only, you know, or we'll bring in somebody to do the BSL if it's something that affects deaf people. Well, everything the council does affects deaf people. So yeah, so the Lib Dems would like to make BSL given full legal recognition as a language. And it should be included in everything that the council does, as obviously should closed caption texts. I also agree with Sandy. The Zoom meetings have been brilliant. The government have again, or the High Court today has rejected an appeal for councils to be able to carry on meeting on Zoom. Why? It's been a really great way to allow people to engage with the process who can't get into the council chamber. It's a great way of engaging everybody and opening up the ability for people who are time limited, who are wrangling their children, who don't have access to be able to get into the city centre. All of these things for everybody's access, and it's especially impacts on disabled people, not to be able to, you know, if they can't attend meetings online, and have to attend in person, it does make it a lot more difficult. So I would say we should keep making a lot of noise about this, and the disabled groups should make an absolute stink about it. Things have been more equitable for everybody, having access over Zoom, and all meetings should have closed captions and a DSL interpreter. Yeah, but there shouldn't be any debate about it. I'm sorry, there just shouldn't.
Thank you, Caroline. Alan, the next question.
Yeah, and this is probably, unfortunately, Chair, given the time, the last one we have time for, but another very important question. C19 has had a massive impact on the mental health and well-being of people in this city. What plans do the candidates have for supporting and addressing mental health and well-being issues, and supporting people to improve mental health and well-being, to play their full part as citizens in the city as we go forward?
Okay, so this is me being really random. Alistair.
I don't think that's random. It's come back to my turn, I think, by now. Yeah, I think coming out of COVID-19, there will be a need for more services. People will need help, particularly those that have been self-isolating or, you know, found it difficult to get out during that time. There's the problem with carers who haven't had the accessibility, and, you know, all sorts of things, and it does impact people's lives, both mental and physical ways. I'm hoping that the government will have a fund that we can tap into, because I think the council does have a role here to help people through our social services, to make sure that our mental health services are available, and public health and so on. So, you know, I really do think that there will be a need to help out here. We do want to get back to near normal, or normal, hopefully, eventually. So, you know, we will be there. But I would also want to work with the charitable sector and the services that we use, you know, and the organisations here today. That would certainly, you know, we all need to come together to work on this one over, you know, maybe, you know, it could be 12 months or more that we have to work on this particular issue, and work together, obviously, for the whole future. So it is an issue, and it is something that if I was mayor, I'd be looking at. It'd be part of the plan, you know, get business going, make sure people are supported, make sure anybody with disabilities are particularly helped if they've got specific issues.
Okay, thank you. Caroline?
Yeah, so COVID has been particularly difficult on disabled people. I've got some data here that basically says that 81% of disabled people have had difficulties accessing healthcare during lockdown. 40% of disabled people have faced mental distress. And that also disabled children have not been able to access the care that they need. As I said, you know, difficulties with SEND planning as well. And people have reported loneliness, sleep, anxiety, and behavioural problems with disabled children. So there's quite a lot that we're going to have to do. We've got quite a backlog of problems now that we've really sort of set up because of this. So it's going to take a while, I think, firstly to work out what help actually people need, and so we will need groups like yours to kind of to help us with that. As I said in this intro, good neighbour networks try and identify who might be at risk. We need greater funding for mental health services, and especially if we could target extra mental health services to disabled people. So that it's just, I actually just think we need to find out what people need now, because people have just got a backlog of issues. So we need to sort of work out what we can deal with. So I think maybe it would be worth actually just going through with everyone who's got a care plan, you know, what their backlogs are, what they need to get sorted quickly, and see if we can help. Obviously, I said we wanted to get more GPs in place. Yeah, there's just a big backlog of work I think we need to get through to help people recover.
Thank you, Caroline. Sandy.
Thank you. So this is mental health is something that I've seen in my day job running a large youth organisation, and I know it's a huge issue across many communities, and it's generally those who are already on the edge, already suffering. It's become a great deal worse, particularly those who feel lonely and isolated. It's a huge issue. So I think there's a number of sort of steps that we can take, and at the heart of this has to be a network, the network of organisations like yours that already exist, and that's why it's so important that we keep that core funding, that network going, because the first thing we have to do is provide people with information. We've talked about how we do that, but it's really important that people get the information about where they can get help. Often people who feel isolated don't know where to start. My second principle is that prevention is best. Catching it early, it's something we do in my day job, making sure that we really embed the knowledge around mental health, some basic training within all our staff. So I would look to make sure all council staff, whether it's sort of housing or benefits officers or others, have that basic mental health first aid training, so they can spot it, they can provide some initial support, but also that referral onto other organisations who might be able to help. Then finally, there is that longer term support that's needed, and again, this is where the charity sector that we have in the city is so vital, because it can provide that NHS support, which actually is what most people need. And so we have to build the capacity of our charities to be able to respond to the mental health crisis. I would look for existing funding from within the council, but there has to be funding that comes from central government to help us meet this need. So there's more to say then about how we link them with the sort of high-end NHS services, which I think there's a gap that often people fall through, but that's maybe a slightly more technical thing. But information, prevention, and then support for charities who are offering mental health support.
Thank you, Sandy. And Marvin.
Yeah, thank you. So again, I just say from the beginning with COVID, we were very clear in our communications that the challenge of COVID was not just the virus, but it was going to be the consequences of the actions we take to manage the virus, mainly in the lockdown, the social isolation, the impact on children for whom home was not the safest place, increases in domestic violence, people going through loss and mourning and bereavement, and not having the community, the normal support structures around them, grieving home alone, and we in the flat out and the poverty and the job losses. So we recognise that. So two things on leadership. One is it's one of the reasons we've over the last, as soon as I came in, we elevated our Director of Public Health because that is where the expertise comes on public mental health, acute services in our NHS, yes, but prevention, wellness, well-being, building resilience in the community, absolutely essential pre-crisis. And actually, I will say our Director of Public Health was my boss when I was at the NHS running the public mental health programme in the equalities team. Second, again, if I can just go back, this commission, we're not loading up the whole world's issues and laying it on the shoulders of the commission, but to, the space for disabled people to lead and to shape city priorities, not just of the local authority, but the NHS and the Health and Wellbeing Board, our transport leads, when we're thinking about social isolation and physical exclusion from the city, the economy board, when we're thinking about the importance of work, good quality, steady work is one of the single most significant interventions on supporting good mental health. So again, that leadership will be essential. Just to say, we did actually fund WECIL to provide some specific phone support during COVID. Remember, we ran the We Are Bristol helpline for people that are falling into any kind of difficulty. And they offered that specific phone support and signposting, and worked, in partnership with WECIL to ensure that needs were met as best as possible, whatever those were, direct mental health or the conditions that that challenge people's mental health and well-being, such as food insecurity. And staff we've made sure that our officers in the council have been offered mental health first aid training as well, and actually some councillors did it also, to make sure that we have a mental health equipped organisation. And Ash has led an incredible piece of work in the city on Thrive. A couple of things to that: 96% of our primary schools have taken mental health training, a program called Jigsaw. But Thrive is about thinking about those wider determinants of health, as I said, across employment, poverty, domestic violence and abuse. Importantly, we set up the digital exclusion program in the city, getting machines, training and data out to households, at the moment, and talking to City of Bristol College and UWE about making sure that any adult can access education and training, again, two of the determinants of better mental health and well-being. So it really is trying to fire on all fronts, but absolutely recognise, the scale of the challenge, and we're not going to hit the standards that we want because of the scale of the challenge facing us, and that's one of the frustrations of political leadership. But we're really pulling out all the stops to be as supportive to our population as we possibly can be.
Thank you. We've overrun, so I've got the great job of winding all this up. So thank you to everybody who's come today. And as Anela mentioned earlier, questions that people have raised should be able to get answers by written answers to questions we did not reach. And so I'm going to thank all the candidates. It's been really interesting seeing you and listening to you all today. And I think we've all acknowledged that what makes life easier for people with disabilities makes it better for everybody. And that's one message I always like to bang home. And so thank you for everybody who's the participants who I can't see here today, but I know they're there. And thank you for everybody and for great questions. Thank you.
And can I just say once again, apologies for the technical hitches with the BSL interpreters. Apologies for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for the evening. Take care.
Thank you for organising.
Thank you very much. Been very, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.